Not so fast. Yesterday, we tried to look at the positives. The Phoenix Suns did not allow us to get more than 24 hours before dragging us back to the sad reality that we find ourselves in. Welcome into today's edition of The Lunch Break. Chris Schubert with you for the next 2 hours before we hand things off to Jim Rome. Yes, that's right, Jim Rome here on the station. That started on Monday, so you can hear him from 1 to 4 right after us. So we've got you for the next 2 hours. And listen, if you are a basketball fan, if you are a Phoenix Suns fan, if you want to vent, if you want to hear somebody vent on your behalf, then today is the show for you. I think at some point we'll get some Cardinals in here, but this is going to be a very Suns-heavy day because last night felt like a turning point. Last night felt like the game that we are going to look back on 6, 12, 18 months from now as the moment where this all came to an end. So let's not waste any time because the Phoenix Suns, as they have been for the last couple of days here on the show, are today's Daily Special.
Time for our top story of the day. It's the Daily Special.
I don't care that it was a back-to-back. I don't care that it was another road game. You cannot lose that basketball game last night. If you want to try to convince all of us that things are okay, and I don't know how much convincing there is to be done at this point about things are okay because we know things are not okay. But if you are going to try to put together a brave face, if you are going to try to maybe attempt to convince us that no, this core is fine, this core can get it done, this core can get into the postseason, they can continue to have all of the dreams and goals and aspirations that they had at the beginning of the season. Last night was the last straw. Last night's 115-104 loss to the now 8-win Charlotte Hornets is where enough became enough. This team is not acting like a team. This team is not a basketball team. There is not a single ounce of cohesion to this team on either side of the floor. The culture of this team right now is rotten. How do you lose to a basketball team who is 7-27, a top 10 lottery team? But by the way, I don't know if you've looked lately, the Phoenix Suns closing down into the top 10 of the draft lottery. You lost to a Charlotte Hornets team last night that their last win was December 8th. It was nearly a month ago the last time the Charlotte Hornets won a basketball game, and that's what happened to you last night. And there are no excuses. All three members of the Big Three are available. We got the quintessential Devin Booker performance. You finally started to see the signs of him coming out of whatever's been bothering him for the start of this season. Numbers that are nowhere near what you expect from him in his career. 39 last night, still not enough. This team does not play any defense. And you just lost to one of the worst teams in the NBA. We got less than 24 hours into this new era of Beal and Nurkic being on the bench for it to all come crumbling down. It's why yesterday we said, how sustainable is this? The answer I did not think would come in less than 12 hours later, but it did. The answer, completely unsustainable. This isn't working. We are going to spend a lot of time today because this show is where we are officially waving the white flag. It's over. It's done. This team, as currently constructed, cannot go on. And I don't mean this is where you trade for Jimmy Butler. I don't mean this is where you continue to push all in. This is where you admit the failure. This is where you admit this is done. Moving Bradley Beal and Yusuf Nurkic to the bench lasted all of one game. Did you see their stat lines last night? If you didn't, I'll read them to you. Hopefully you have a trash can nearby, so if you puke, it can go into the trash receptacle. Yusuf Nurkic last night, a minus 22. Bradley Beal, a minus 21. 10 points off the bench in 31 minutes. So we got the one game from Bradley Beal. He got moved to the bench. Oh, I'll show you, coach. I'll show you, Matt Ishbia. Leads the team 25 points. They beat a undermanned, shorthanded Philadelphia 76ers team. Night 2, and I'm sorry. This team no longer gets the benefit of the doubt. They no longer get the built-in excuses. I don't care that it was a back-to-back. I don't care. Truthfully, doesn't matter to me. Win the basketball game. You are now 16-19. You are 3 games below 500. I've said this before. The team directly in front of you in the standings is the team that has already fired their head coach this season. That's where we're at. And things don't get any better. Every time I continue to think we've hit rock bottom, a new rock bottom emerges. Last night felt like, I don't know if there's any more digging we can do into this hole. A 7-win basketball team beat you last night. A basketball team that hadn't won a game in over a month beat you last night. You're the more talented team. You probably have the better coach of the two teams. You're not 7-27 bad. You're a team that's supposed to have championship aspirations that isn't playing anywhere near championship caliber basketball. But you're not the Charlotte Hornets, or at least I thought you weren't before last night. The noise around this team hasn't been louder than it has been in the last couple of days. Since Sunday night when we learned that Bradley Beal and Yusuf Nurkic were going to the bench, that felt like the wake-up call. That felt like the sirens sounding. That felt like, okay, it's not going to get any louder than this. It is put up or shut up time. And look at how the team responded. Look at what you saw in that basketball game last night. And truthfully, I don't want to hear about Devin Booker's 39-point performance. They lost the game. They can't afford too many more losses. Just do the math. Look where they're at in the standings. Look at who they have to chase. Look at everything that's going to be in front of them. And truthfully, just watch the game. We're 35 games in now. Has anything changed from the beginning of the season? Does anything look better? Does anything look like it's improving? We said that the move to take Bradley Beal and Yusuf Nurkic and move them to the bench were desperate measures from a desperate team at a desperate time. We didn't disagree with making the moves because you have to do everything in your power. But you want to know what the worst case scenario is when you do everything in your power and it's still not good enough. And last night showed you it's still not good enough. Bradley Beal was a minus 21 last night. Yusuf Nurkic was a minus 22. As bench players, not in the starting lineup. That's the effort you got. Those are the numbers they put up. What are you supposed to do? You have Mason Plumlee, who you've thrusted into being the starting center. He's not a starting center. Yusuf Nurkic is supposed to be your starting center. You move into a bench role, and you have a guy that is a minus 22. What are you supposed to do? What are you supposed to do? Here's a guy who you traded for. You got rid of DeAndre Ayton for. You decided, want to get out of the DeAndre Ayton business. You want to convince me that Yusuf Nurkic needed to be moved to the bench. Bradley Beal needed to be moved to the bench. Those guys, minus 21, minus 22, respectively, off the bench last night. Yusuf Nurkic, a guy that you, let's face it, you got out of the DeAndre Ayton business for. You said, don't want to be in the DeAndre Ayton business anymore. We're going to make this move. We're going to get Yusuf Nurkic. So that trade looks like a mess. You went out and traded for Bradley Beal. That looks like a mess. It's over. It's done. There's nothing else for you to do. And if last night, if you are somebody that is still holding on, if you are somebody that is still thinking that they can turn this around, I don't know what else to tell you. I've got nothing else for you. I've got nothing. I can't convince you anymore. They just lost to a 7-win basketball team, now an 8-win basketball team. A team that is in the mix to be a lottery pick, a top 5 pick. That's who the Charlotte Hornets are. That's the team you lost to last night. After making moves that desperate teams do to turn things around. That's how they responded. That's what you got last night. And yeah, Devin Booker played great. But this team is not a team. This team is not a team. There's no cohesion. There's no culture. Where's the culture coming from? Who's the guy that's going to stand there and look at the rest of the team and say, you know what? Enough is enough. Who's it going to be? Is it going to be Kevin Durant? Is it going to be Devin Booker? Is it going to be Bradley Beal? Let's look at each of those 3 cases real quick. I know we're up against it. But let's look at each of those 3 guys. Because, listen, when things get tough and when things go sideways, there's a lot of finger pointing. Nobody wants to hear it. And so you know what? If Kevin Durant's the guy that steps up and tries to say something, there's going to be a lot of people probably that go, oh, really, dude? The guy who forced his way out of Brooklyn, who went to Golden State to chase a ring? Listen, the finger pointing starts when stuff like this happens. Devin Booker, the guy who has never been able to do it here in Phoenix. Is that the guy that's going to step up and say something? Or is it going to be Bradley Beal, the guy who has had basically his voice removed from him by being moved to a bench role? Who's it going to be? Is it going to be the coach that's been here for 35 games? Where is it coming from? The owner that just got here, who's only been here for a couple of seasons? There isn't somebody that can stand up in that room and say enough is enough. They don't have the infrastructure for it. It doesn't exist. And so when you lose a game like you do last night, I'm not surprised anymore. There is nothing that's going to happen for this team that is going to surprise me anymore. So where do we go from here? Where should we go from here? Those are the questions that we're going to try to unravel here today on the show. Like I said, if you are a basketball fan, if you want to see the best thing for this Suns team moving forward, today is the show for you. Hop on board for the next 2 hours. We've got you covered. I'll sprinkle in some football, but we are Suns heavy today here on the program. 480-864-1060. Where are you at? Are you done? Is this over for you? It should be, but I want to know. 480-864-1060. If you are done with this team, what do you need to see now moving forward? We will attempt to unpack that ourselves here over the course of the next 2 hours. On the other side, where do we go from here? What does this need to look like? We'll get into it next here on the lunch break. KDUS AM 1060. I promise we'll do a little bit of Cardinals in about 15 minutes. We'll look at where they stand with the 5 pillars. Yesterday we told you nothing new, but I believe in the 5 pillars of building an organization. We will see where they're at going into this offseason when it comes to the 5 pillars. But this is a Suns heavy day here on the show. Another loss last night, a team that has hit rock bottom, and a team that unfortunately has put us in the position of wondering if this needs to be a complete reset. If this needs to be a complete do-over. And I've been there for a while now. I mean, I tried. Last summer, I wasn't sure I was on board with running it back. I thought first round exit, get swept. That's it. This did not work. It's not a time to try to do this over again. You should move on. They made some moves in the summer. They clearly showed to you that they were going to run it back. Okay. I will give it a fair shot. We're 35 games into the season. This is enough. Enough is enough when it comes to this team. And here is the real interesting dilemma that this team finds itself in. They have to make a decision on extending Kevin Durant this upcoming offseason. As we sit here right now, take away the talent level that Kevin Durant is. Take away the player that he is when he's on the floor. Do you think it is in the best interest of this team to give a player who's now another year older in Kevin Durant a contract extension to lock yourself into trying to make this work? It's off the table right now. Extending Kevin Durant can't even be front of mind for this team. Is this going to get better as things age, as these players age, as this gets further and further down the road, or is it only going to get worse? You're not going to run this back. These three guys, Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal, and Kevin Durant, are not going to be together next season. When we start next season, those three guys are not going to be together. One, if not two or three of them, are going to be gone. And we talked yesterday about Bradley Beal being moved to the bench. We played you his comments on the Butler trade and how he holds all the cards and how he was going to be a good teammate, how he was going to be the right person, be a good person and not be a jerk and throw a fit about being benched, but he disagreed with it being put to that role. Well, that was after the game. So yesterday, before they lost to Charlotte, Brian Windhorst was on First Take. And I want you to listen to what he has to say about the decision to bench Bradley Beal and where things stand, because that's going to lead us into where this team needs to go from here.
Well, Melly, let me put those rumors about Beal to rest. They absolutely are trying to trade Bradley Beal. And one of the cardinal rules of sports, certainly in basketball, but across the board, is you never devalue your players, your assets. You never do anything bad to make them seem less valuable, especially when you are about to trade them. So they put him on the bench. Now you may say, why would you do that? If you're trying to trade a player, why would you put him on the bench? And that's because, guys, this situation is bleeped. And the reason it's bleeped is because the way they trade Bradley Beal is because he's got one of two no-trade clauses in the NBA. One is LeBron James, one is Bradley Beal. The only way they can trade him is if he says, I'm okay to be traded. So instead of trying to build him up, they have to violate the cardinal rule and put him on the bench. Now, I know that there were schematic reasons why they did it, and Mike Budenholzer tried to explain, but they're basically trying to make him feel unwelcome in Phoenix so that he will waive that no-trade clause. The player they want to trade him for is Jimmy Butler, but the Heat don't want Bradley Beal. So the only way for the Suns to get Jimmy Butler is to find a third team that not only would take Bradley Beal, because he's got 2 years and $100 million and is playing so poorly that they've got him coming off the bench, and then that team that would maybe take him has to take him where Beal would waive the no-trade clause. And all of this doesn't even take into account that Kevin Durant has 1 year left on his contract. And if they can't thread that needle, then you have to start worrying about that on the horizon.
Want to make him feel unwelcomed. That's the takeaway that I had from that cut from First Take yesterday, before what we saw last night. They are doing this to make him feel unwelcomed. So where do we go from here? You have a team that's 3 games below 500. You have a team that's nowhere near being in contention for what they want to be this year. Mind you, they might be able to rally the troops and get this together to be able to sneak into the play-in tournament. But what this team is supposed to be, with the amount of money that is invested into this team, they're not supposed to be, we'll just be happy to get into the playoffs. They're supposed to be up at the top of the standings. They're supposed to be competing for the Western Conference Finals. That's off the table right now. Doesn't exist. Not the reality that we live in. Maybe in a different timeline, maybe in a different universe, but not this one. The one where you and I are having this conversation here today, it does not exist. So what do teams in this spot normally do? Maybe you take a page out of the Sacramento Kings book and you fire a coach. Well, you just brought this coach in to fix this, and you've only given him 35 games. So you've already done the coach change. Do you make a big trade? Good luck with that. Did you not hear? I've been telling you this for weeks. Everybody's been talking about how complicated it would be for the Suns to pull this off, to make a big trade, to move Bradley Beal, and to get Jimmy Butler. Here are the teams that are currently in the final 4 spots in the Western Conference, meaning they are in the play-in tournament. The Clippers, the Timberwolves, the Spurs, the Golden State Warriors. I ask you, who you catching? Of those teams that are in the play-in tournament, and mind you, you now have to get past the Kings as well. You have to pass them in the standings because they're in front of you. But just looking at the play-in tournament teams right now, who are you catching? Are you catching the Timberwolves? Are you catching Golden State? You catching those teams? You just lost to Charlotte last night. I don't care that it was the second leg of a back-to-back. I don't care. You lost to that team. You can't afford those losses anymore. They just don't exist. So who are you catching? So right now, as we sit here, extending Kevin Durant is completely off limits, at least to me. And so if extending him is off limits, then it is time. It's time, everybody. It's time for Matt Ishbia to show what kind of owner he is. It's time for Matt Ishbia to look into a camera, to get in front of the media, and say, this hasn't worked. This is broken. And it probably means a Kevin Durant trade, and it probably means a Bradley Beal trade. And then you can evaluate if you want to pull the ultimate ripcord and trade Devin Booker. But this is over. January 8th, 2025, the Suns' Big Three is over. It's done. If they choose to move forward, or if they choose to force this Jimmy Butler thing through, they deserve everything that comes after that. They deserve to see what tripling, quadrupling down looks like. Because I just said in the final segment, who's the guy that's going to step up and be the culture guy? Who's going to be the person that steps up and gets this team back on track? I'm here to tell you who it's not. The guy who is currently trying to force his way out of Miami. So if you think Jimmy Butler cures everything, he might on the basketball court. This team has a culture problem. This team is not a team. Ergo, culture problem. When you watch the Phoenix Suns right now, do you feel like you're watching team basketball? Do you feel it? Do you feel like you're watching team basketball? Or do you feel like you're watching a bunch of guys that have been put together and are just playing the game? Which one is it? The Phoenix Suns are broken. I've said this before. Not go to the store and get replacement parts or go to the store and get new batteries broken. They are, it is broken, needs to be thrown in the trash. We need to go buy a new one broken. That's what the Phoenix Suns are. You think after what you saw last night, you think after moving Bradley Beal and Yusuf Nurkic to the bench and them being a combined minus 43 last night, you think that means, oh, I just need some AAA batteries. Oh, I just need some duct tape to fix this. This needs major surgery. They tried. Give them credit for trying to run it back. Give them credit for making the necessary tweaks, getting a new coach, drafting Ryan Dunn. Give them credit for trying, getting Tyus Jones. They did not leave a stone unturned in their pursuit of running this back, but making necessary changes. That I will not hold against them. They made the coaching change that we all thought they needed to make. They got better on the wing with Ryan Dunn. They got a veteran point guard. They checked all the boxes. If you went back in time to the offseason and you said, if you're going to run it back, what does this team need to do? They would have said, coach, point guard, wing. They did all that. They checked all those boxes. It's still not working. Okay, you gave it a shot. It didn't work. It's time to move on. It's time to try to salvage something from this because this can go a couple of different ways. Way number one, you stay on this course and you hope it works out, and maybe it does. What that looks like is probably just getting into the playoffs. You might be able to get there. That might be possible. There's a lot of talent on this team, so you would expect at some point for them to be able to go on some type of run to be able to make that possible. That's one way this could go. It could also just fall flat on its face. You could continue down this path, not make any changes, and it could be a complete mess. And you can try to run it back, and you can extend Kevin Durant, and you can just keep trying and keep trying and keep trying. Or there's another path this could take. You could admit defeat. You could admit that you had 2 chances at this, and they didn't work out, and so you trade Kevin Durant. You call up Houston. Remember that rumor from the draft? Or you call up one of the other teams that has a boatload of draft picks that would be willing to give you something back. Because if you're going to hit the reset button, you need to be able to have assets to do it. There's no sense in trading Kevin Durant or trading Bradley Beal or trading Devin Booker unless you're going to get something back that allows you to rebuild this thing quickly, which means young players and draft picks. Because right now they don't have any of that. They got a bunch of pick swaps until, 2031 is their next unprotected pick that they can move? So that is another path. Salvage something from this. You tried, it didn't work. Hit the reset button. Give yourself a chance to retool on the fly a little bit. Give yourself a chance to get one more core with Devin Booker if you want to keep him. But don't continue down this path. Please. It's over. Last night is just the latest example of the reason why it's over. I need a break from the basketball. I said it's going to be a Suns heavy show. It will be a Suns heavy show, but we can't do 2+ hours on it. We can't. We need to have a reprieve. We need to have something that's a little bit more upbeat, a little bit more positive. On the other side, where do the Cardinals stand with the 5 pillars of building a great NFL team? That's next on the lunch break. KDUS AM 1060. We'll get back into the Suns in about 15 minutes. If they are benching Bradley Beal on purpose, like Brian Windhorst claimed, what type of long-term ramifications does that have? We'll dive into that in about 15 minutes from now. But I do want to take a break from the Suns. I want to focus on the Arizona Cardinals. Their season over. They are in full offseason mode. It is preparation for the offseason. It is preparation for the Senior Bowl, the scouting combine, free agency, the draft. It is all preparation to build up this roster, to take an 8-9 team and build on it to where they are a double-digit win team next year. They are a playoff team next year. That is what the task is for Monty Ossenfort and company this offseason. So, when doing that, you default back to where you stand when it comes to what we are calling here on this show the 5 pillars. Now, these are the positions that everybody talks about, the things you have to have when building an NFL team. We have given them a name. I don't know if anybody else has had this name for them. I've always referred to them as the 5 pillars. These are just the non-negotiables, right? You're buying a house, you're getting a new car, you're making a major life change. The non-negotiables, things that if they are not there, I'm not buying the car. I'm not buying the house. I'm not getting into that relationship if you don't have the 5 pillars. So what are the 5 pillars of building an NFL team? These are the 5 positions you need to focus on. Quarterback, left tackle, wide receiver, edge, and corner. That's what you need. You have a stud at those positions. You build those positions out, you're going to have a chance. If you have a good quarterback, a good left tackle, a good wide receiver, a good edge, and a good corner, you can go far in the NFL. So, let's frame the offseason for the Arizona Cardinals through that lens. Is there a 5-pillar position that they need to focus on? Because if you do, that moves to the front of the list. That moves to the top of the list. For the teams that have their 5 pillars figured out, it's all the other stuff. It's all the complementary pieces, the depth pieces, right? So when looking at the 5 pillars for the Arizona Cardinals, where do they stand? So let's go one by one. Quarterback. Okay. This is going to be a big one. This is going to be a tough one. Because there are probably some of you out there who believe the Cardinals have their quarterback, that you would say that they satisfy this pillar, that Kyler Murray is good enough for them to win. There are some of you out there that are done with Kyler Murray. There are some of you out there that saw the way that he played post-bye week this season, that have seen enough of his career in the NFL to say he can't win the big one. He can't get it done. Kyler Murray, when it comes to is he or is he not franchise quarterback or not franchise quarterback, a very divisive figure. I don't know. Here's what I do know, though. They're not going to address this pillar this offseason. So through that lens, we would say, yes, they have that pillar. They're not addressing quarterback this offseason. Now, another year goes by, poor performances within the division, poor performances in meaningful games late in the season, the contract much more easy to get out of after next season, different conversation. But for right now, as we sit here, that pillar, we would give it a check mark. Left tackle. I mean, Paris Johnson Jr.'s got that spot locked down. He's not going anywhere. The moment they're able to do a contract extension, they will do a contract extension. He's awesome. He's a linchpin to the offensive line. You just put him over there on the left side, and it is perfect. It's going to protect Kyler Murray. The ultimate check. Wide receiver. Now, it was a disappointing rookie campaign. It was not statistically what we thought it could be. There needs to be more next season. There needs to be growth and development, and there's a bunch of parties involved on that. But I don't think any of us sit here today thinking that it was a mistake that the Cardinals took Marvin Harrison Jr. I don't think there's anybody saying that it was a bust selection to take Marvin Harrison Jr. There is zero reason to waver in what Marvin Harrison Jr. can be, because if what we got this season from him is the worst you're going to see from him, you got a pretty good wide receiver on your hands. And I think next year is the year you see him evolve into that true number one threat that we think he can be, where he's putting up 1,000-plus yard seasons, that he's scoring double-digit touchdowns, that he is a game changer, a difference maker. I think it is next season where we see that. But there's nothing about this rookie campaign, which statistically is disappointing, But there's nothing about it to waver in your position that it was a good pick, that he's going to be a good wide receiver, and he's going to be here for a really long time. Again, if that year that we just got from Marvin Harrison Jr. is the worst year we see from him, I think things are going to be okay. So of the three pillars on offense, we would say there are three checks. Two slam dunk checks, left tackle and wide receiver. Quarterback, we're giving it a check for now, but that's up in the air. So let's go to the two pillars on defense. Pillar number one, an edge rusher. I'm leaving the silence in there because there isn't anything to talk about here. Here is the pillar that needs to be addressed. We said pillars get moved to the front of the line the moment they are identified as needing to be addressed. Edge moves to the top of the list. It's already been there, but it's at the top of the list. They don't have a Myles Garrett. They don't have a Max Crosby. They don't have a Micah Parsons. And I know those are three elite of the elite pass rushers, but look around all the teams that are going to be playing this Saturday, Sunday, and Monday in the NFL playoffs. They've all got at least one dude that can get after the quarterback. The Cardinals need to get there. The Cardinals need to find their dude at edge. So it is the one pillar that is unchecked. Corner, man, I think Garrett Williams is a stud. What a steal pick for the Cardinals. He dropped in the draft because he was coming off of a major knee injury. They grab him in the third round. He has a decent rookie campaign. And then this year, how about this for you? In single coverage, he has a 92.2 PFF grade. I'm just throwing numbers at you, but it's the best among corners. Garrett Williams, the best, not just amongst NFC corners or NFC, no. Amongst all corners in the NFL in single coverage, Garrett Williams grades out the best. You've got a dude at corner. You've got a shutdown corner that can take away an opposing team's number one wide receiver. So I've got the left tackle. I've got the corner. I'm almost positive I've got the wide receiver. And for now, I've got the quarterback. So when you look at the five pillars for the Arizona Cardinals, they're doing a lot better than a bunch of other teams. Do yourself a little bit of a thought exercise. Pick a team in the NFC West and go through this exercise. Go through the five pillars and ask yourself, do they have more or less pillars than the Cardinals? Go across all the teams in the NFC that the Cardinals will be competing with next year. Look at them through the lens of the five pillars. Where do the Cardinals stack up? You might be surprised where they find themselves in the exercise of the five pillars. Because one could make the very rosy argument that you have four of these five locked up. Kyler, Paris Johnson, Marvin Harrison Jr., Garrett Williams. You just need an edge. To have four of the five means you should be a bona fide playoff contender. You should be right there. Now, the reason why maybe they're not is because do they really have a quarterback? Are we really there with the wide receiver? That's when you start to nitpick. Do you truly have what the five pillars are supposed to be at their peak? But it's a very easy case to make that the Cardinals have four of the five pillars. For this offseason, there is one major pillar that needs to be addressed. It's the pillar that we've been talking about for over a year now. They need to find a pass rusher. I know they drafted Darius Robinson in last year's draft to help with that, but they need a dude. They need a stud. And so if you're starting your mock draft journey, if you're starting your deep dive into players that are going to be available for the Cardinals, look at who might be available when they pick with the 16th overall pick in the 2025 NFL draft. Look to see what edge players might be there. Because unless they address it via a trade or via free agent signing, maybe Hassan Reddick returns here, then it is going to be the most obvious team need. Best edge on the board is going to go to the Cardinals at 16. It's going to be one of the easier predictions to make. And we'll do it here on the show. We will give you a full predictive mock draft when we get closer to the draft. I've done this the last couple of years. I've done pretty well the last couple of years. Pretty good at reading the tea leaves, seeing team needs, knowing these players. So we'll do that as we get closer to the draft. But if you don't address it in free agency and you don't address it via a trade, it's going to become very clear and very obvious what your priorities are going to be in the draft and what you are going to be looking at when you select in the first round of the draft. And we've made the case of, is that really the way you want to address that pillar? Do you want to go with somebody on the younger side that maybe needs some time to develop, or with where this team is at in their life cycle, it's time to maybe go for a veteran player, a player that can immediately hit the ground running and give you that juice, give you those numbers, the production immediately instead of waiting for it to develop over the course of a rookie campaign? I don't know. It's all going to depend on what's available. It's all going to depend on what the Cardinals are willing to do. Are there edge players that price themselves out of where the Cardinals want to be? I would love it if they shopped in the mid-tier edge bucket via free agency and then added a rookie with one of their first 2 picks. That feels like the best of both worlds. We're looking long-term but also addressing short-term. Whereas if you go all in by signing Hassan Reddick, you may want to use your first-round pick in a different direction. And so multiple ways to build a team, multiple ways to go about this. It's nice to be in the position that the Cardinals find themselves in. We wrap up hour number 1 of the lunch break on the other side. You want to join us here, 480-864-1060 is the phone number, or on the YouTube stream, KDUS AM 1060. If they are doing this on purpose, what are the long-term ramifications of benching Bradley Beal? That's next on the lunch break, KDUS AM 1060. We will start hour number 2 by talking about the Suns doing the unthinkable. But right now, we dive back into Bradley Beal, him being moved to the bench, why the Suns are doing so, and what are the long-term ramifications of that move. So they bench Bradley Beal. They move him out of the starting lineup. Comes off the bench against Philadelphia, leads the way with 25 points. They pick up a win. They kind of, for at least a brief moment, put everything on pause. People called off the dogs. Okay, you won. The move worked. Let's see how sustainable it is, right? That was our conversation yesterday. Well, we played for you earlier in this hour from Brian Windhorst on First Take on ESPN. Him talking about why the Suns did what they did. that they are doing this because they are actively trying to trade Bradley Beal. He made no bones about it. They are actively trying to trade Bradley Beal. And they are doing this bench move because it's counterintuitive, as Wendy points out. Normally, you don't want to devalue an asset. You don't want to make them a role player, a bench player. That makes it to where when a team calls you up to try to trade for him, that they're not going to pay starting player caliber prices for a player that's coming off the bench. You don't devalue an asset, right? Well, because of the no trade clause, what the Suns are doing here is they're trying to make Bradley Beal uncomfortable. They're trying to make Bradley Beal, I'll use Wendy's phrase, make him feel, quote, unwelcomed in Phoenix. They want to push him to a point where no matter what deal they bring to him, because remember, Bradley Beal says, I hold all the cards. Bradley Beal says, until I'm addressed, I'm a Phoenix Sun. So they haven't come to him yet with something. They know they have to because of the no trade clause, but they haven't yet. At least according to Bradley Beal, they have not. He has not been addressed yet. So when they do put that deal in front of him, they want to, with their actions here over the last couple of days, they want him to be in the mental headspace of wanting out no matter what. That it doesn't matter what team name is on the other end of the line. Bradley Beal wants out of Phoenix. That's what they are trying to do. Very much feels like they're doing it on purpose. Very much feels like this is a deliberate attempt to annoy one of your players. That doesn't happen in a vacuum. That doesn't happen without everybody else seeing how Bradley Beal is treated. You don't think players talk? You don't think superstars are paying attention to the way a superstar in Bradley Beal is being treated right now? You don't think that that's going to go into the calculation for players, whether or not they want to sign with Phoenix in free agency? This doesn't just matter for right now. This matters for next offseason, the offseason after that, offseasons well into the future. This stuff has long-term ramifications. What if a player goes, I don't want to go to Phoenix. Look at how they treated Bradley Beal. Look at what they did to try to force him out. And ultimately, if this does end in a place where Bradley Beal is gone and Jimmy Butler is brought in here and this thing ages terribly and this thing ages where they do blow it up, they do hit the reset button, they don't get to a Western Conference final, they don't win a championship with this core, it's only going to age even worse. It's only going to be looked back upon, what they are doing right now to Bradley Beal, in hindsight, even more terribly than it does in the moment. This stuff matters. This stuff has ramifications. Players are paying attention to how this plays out. It's being talked about everywhere. We played you the cut from Brian Windhorst. Bradley Beal's being asked about it post-game. It is probably the top story in the NBA right now that the Suns are trying to trade for Jimmy Butler. They're trying to move Bradley Beal, and they're benching him in order to do so. You have one of the ESPN top NBA insiders talking about it on ESPN television yesterday. You don't think that players are paying attention? You don't think that that's a big deal? Of course it's a big deal. Of course it's a big deal that a team is potentially, purposefully, benching a player to try to get them to waive their no-trade clause. That's newsworthy. That's noteworthy. It has a long-term impact. And the worst part about it is you don't even know if it's going to work because you're being so open about it, because it's almost transparent beyond belief. Everybody sees it. Everybody sees what you're trying to do. You've got reporters talking about it. You have insiders talking about it on television. It is the most transparent thing in the world. We said it yesterday. High-stakes game of chicken. Bradley Beal could call the bluff. He's got money left on his deal. He could say, you know what? I like making the money that I make. I like living in Phoenix. Maybe the basketball team I play on is not going to be any good, but you know what? You're paying me a lot of money. He's getting older in his career. Maybe he's not interested in chasing the ring. Or maybe he just wants to make this as painful as possible for the Phoenix Suns. And you know what? I hate to bring it back to something you would say in first grade, but for Bradley Beal, the Suns started it. The Suns started this. So if this does play out like a high-stakes game of chicken, if this does play out poorly through the media, through the press, and it it becomes the distraction that we know it's going to become. It already is. It is already a distraction. They've played 2 games with it, and it's already a distraction because Bradley Beal's making $50+ million. Bradley Beal should not be on the bench. He shouldn't be. I don't care that he's not playing well. Bradley Beal's talent level gives you the best chance to win, but they're moving him to the bench. Why? You can say they're trying to change things up. They're trying to figure out a new way. We all know what they're trying to do. At least what it looks like they're trying to do, what it's being reported that they're trying to do. They are trying to trade Bradley Beal, and they are trying, despite both hands being tied behind their back, they are trying to make it as easy as possible to move Bradley Beal because they are trying to push Bradley Beal to a place where he wants out. He wants to be done. Now, the problem with that is it ain't going to be to the Miami Heat. They've said we're good. So you need another team to join this mix. You need another team to want to take on Bradley Beal. This is why we opened the show by saying it's over. It's a mess. It's done for. This didn't work. You gave it a shot. You made the necessary changes in the offseason, but it still wasn't good enough. And I've been big on the culture of the Phoenix Suns today here on the show. That's been where my focus has been lasered in on. You think this is good for the culture of the Phoenix Suns? You think this is good for the culture that Matt Ishbia is trying to build? Matt Ishbia bought this team with the idea of we're not going to play this like the other owner did. We're not going to play this like Sarver did. We're going to be a championship class organization that conducts ourselves in a championship caliber manner with championship caliber expectations. That is who we want to be. That is who we strive to be. Do you feel like these are the actions of a championship caliber organization? Championship level class? Is that what this feels like to you? Or does this feel like something the old school Phoenix Suns would do? Does this feel like something we would see with the last regime? Ask yourself which owner this more lines up with what we're seeing right now. Ask yourself if this is what Matt Ishbia was talking about with the championship caliber level that this team's trying to get to. You can't win without a culture. You can't. You need leaders. You need coaches that are good leaders. You need players that are good leaders. You need good leaders. I am waiting for the good leader on the Phoenix Suns to stand up. The problem, they don't have one. There is a leadership void on this team that cannot be filled. And if it cannot be filled, then this stuff is going to happen. Somebody's got to be the adult in the room. Somebody has to step up, and somebody has to handle this properly. Where's it going to come from? I don't know. I found myself last night after the game wondering, okay, I know how I feel about this. I got to see how everybody else feels. So I went on social media. I was looking at Twitter. I was looking on Reddit. I was looking on Instagram. I was looking at the reaction. There is an overwhelming feeling of this is over. People's expectations are done. Your expectations are done. You don't expect anything from this team anymore. You don't expect this team to all of a sudden find it. You don't expect this team to turn things around because you need something to believe in. You need something to look to as your North Star if you think things are going to turn around. Well, it's not going to be Bradley Beal. They're trying to push him out the door. Is it going to be Kevin Durant? Is it going to be Devin Booker? You got a peak Devin Booker performance last night, 39 points. It wasn't good enough. Are you going to look to the coach who's only been here for 35 games? Who are you going to look to as the North Star? There just isn't one. There just isn't one. Matt Ishbia came in here and made a big splash. He made a big splash for Kevin Durant, made the big splash for Bradley Beal. It's easy to make the big splashes. But you also have to make sure you're bringing in the right players, that you're bringing in, and this is not to say that Kevin Durant and Bradley Beal are contributing to this culture problem, but stuff has to gel. Players have to gel. You can't just run this like it's an NBA 2K franchise mode. It doesn't work like that. Personalities matter. Culture matters. Leadership matters. All of these things are intangibles that need to be a part of your thought process. And it feels like the Suns miscalculated those factors. And now we are at this point where there are two ways out. Way out number one is to look your fan base in the eye and say, I'm sorry. This didn't work out. And the way that we need to fix this and the way that we need to change things around here, it's going to cause some pain. It might force us to take a step back from our expectations and how many games we win. But trust me when I tell you this, we've learned from this mistake. We are going to be better as an organization moving forward. We are going to make the necessary changes that it is going to take, and we are going to invest the necessary resources to build this team back up. What we are asking for you is patience. Give us time. Give us patience. We're sorry. That's pathway one. Pathway two is to triple down, quadruple down, continue to dig the hole further and further and further. That's the second pathway. And there's one thing that the Phoenix Suns could do to triple and quadruple down. There's one thing that's possible. I would describe it as doing the unthinkable. So that's how we will start hour number 2 of the program. We'll go down that path. Could they do the unthinkable? Should they do the unthinkable? That's how we start hour number 2 of the lunch break. We do it next here on KDUS AM 1060. Hour number 2 of the lunch break. We welcome you back in. Appreciate you joining us here. One more hour. We'll pass things off to Jim Rome at the top of the hour. Could the Suns do the unthinkable? And I'm sure there are a lot of things that come to mind for you when it comes to the Suns doing the unthinkable. Is that trading Kevin Durant? Is that trading Devin Booker? Is it hitting the reset button? Nope, it's none of those things. There are 2 paths this team can choose to take right now. They can admit their faults, and they can choose to start over, as painful as that might be. Pathway 2 is to triple down. And tripling down could involve trading one of the few assets this team still controls entirely. And that being the unprotected first-round pick they have in 2031. I was reading a story in Yahoo Sports yesterday. I believe it was Kevin O'Connor who wrote the story talking about the potential landing spots for Jimmy Butler and just all of the chaos that is surrounding the Jimmy Butler side of this. We focus on this show about the Suns' role in all this and the Suns' problems, but there's a lot on Miami's end here as well. And one of the things that Kevin pointed out in the piece was that could perhaps the Phoenix Suns be willing to dangle out that 2031 unprotected first to get a team to be willing to take on Bradley Beal's contract? Because that's going to be the thing that stops teams from lining up. We've talked about Bradley Beal waiving his no-trade clause. You also need teams to want to line up for Bradley Beal's services. Are there teams that are willing to do that and absorb the contract? Well, if you float out a 2031 first-round unprotected pick, that might sweeten the pot just enough to get more teams to enter the fray. So let's start with that, because that's the unthinkable. It's the only asset between now and then that the Suns fully control. All of their draft picks are either gone or they're pick swaps. They don't control entirely a draft selection in the first round until 2031. That's 6 years down the road. I will be closer to being 40 than I am my current age of 30. That's a long way down the road. Kevin Durant's not going to be here when the 2031 unprotected pick rolls around. Bradley Beal's not going to be here when that pick rolls around. Devin Booker might be towards the tail end of his career, but that pick is not going to be associated with this core. So here is the question that I pose to you, the listener, because this is a big deal. This would be a big decision. Do you trade the 2031 unprotected first-round pick and attach it to Bradley Beal's contract to get him out of town? Because it's the last thing you have. It's the last asset that's available to you. It's the one thing that you have draft pick-wise in the first round that's fully yours, that you're allowed to move. It's it. 2031 unprotected first. Would you do it? Looking at this team right now, looking at how they've played, would you continue to mortgage the future beyond where you've already mortgaged it to move on from Bradley Beal and to get Jimmy Butler? Would you do that? Is that what you would do? Do you feel deep down that what this team needs is Bradley Beal out, Jimmy Butler in, and that's the missing ingredient? That's the one thing that this team needs to take them over the top, to fix all of this, to get them right back on track, to put them into the Western Conference Finals, into the NBA Finals, to be holding up the trophy at the end of the season. That's the missing piece that takes them to the next level. And you're willing to mortgage the future even more. You're willing to move a 2031 unprotected first-round pick in order to do so. That's how strong you got to feel. You have to have those types of convictions to move this asset. I know you watched the game last night. I watched the game last night. This team is not those moves away from getting back to where they need to get to. Trading the 2031 unprotected first-round pick would be organizational malpractice. One of my favorite phrases to use in sports. I love it when a team allows me to break out that phrase. It just carries so much weight. Organizational malpractice. It means it's not just one individual, and it goes beyond just a mistake or a blunder or a screw-up. It is a collective disaster. Organizational malpractice is what the Phoenix Suns would be conducting if they moved that pick. To look their fan base in the eye and say, listen, I know what you've seen. I know what you've been watching. But trust us on this. Trust us. All we need to do is just move this pick to get Jimmy Butler. We just need to get this player. We just need to get rid of Bradley Beal. That's what we're missing. And everything's going to be okay. It's like somebody who wants to just play that extra hand of blackjack to get back what they lost on the previous hand. Oh, just one more. Or you're playing video games with your high school buddies or your college buddies. You get together one time a week or one time a month. You get together. There's the one guy. Oh, just one more game, guys. Just one more game. That's what the Phoenix Suns are asking you if they're going to move the 2031 first-round pick. Oh, just one more draft pick. Just one more asset that we no longer have in our arsenal to fix this when it all comes crumbling down. Because you're trading that asset for a lottery ticket to potentially win a championship. And I know the draft pick itself is a lottery ticket, and it's 6 years down the road. I get all of that. But you have mortgaged the future. You're not making picks in 25. You've got pick swaps, I think, in 26 and 28. You've got draft picks that you no longer are going to see already. And you're going to add another pick to that list. Because if you do this and it's wrong and your bet doesn't pay off, you now make it to where this team might not be relevant again until what? 2035? That's 10 years down the road. Is that a bet you're willing to make? Is it a bet you're willing to take that this move turns into a championship? Because if it doesn't, it might be 8 to 10 years worth of pain. You could also just trade Kevin Durant and get some of these picks back. You can trade Bradley Beal and just accept whatever comes with that. You could trade Devin Booker and get even more assets back and no longer have to think on an 8 to 10 year horizon. You can be looking on a 3 to 5 year horizon. No matter what, there's going to be pain involved with this. Which pain would you rather take? Making this move and it crashing and burning and then needing to completely reset and it maybe taking close to a decade to get out of it? Or would you rather take the short-term pain of trading some superstar players but getting control of assets back? Houston has your picks. They traded with Brooklyn to get your picks. Why? Because deep down in that front office, they were waiting for this moment. They were waiting for this opportunity to go to you and say, you're not. Think about what I'm about to say. We're not talking about this for a team that's maybe the 6 seed or the 5 seed that is missing expectations. We're having this conversation with a team that is out of the playoffs entirely. Do you know how difficult it is to miss the playoffs in the NBA? You basically have to try to miss the playoffs in the NBA. They give away playoff spots. 10 teams, both conferences. 20 of the 30 teams get into the play-in tournament. The effort that you have to pull off to not be one of those teams, you either have to be trying or you're completely mismanaged. That's it. You either have to be trying to not make the playoffs or you are so mismanaged that you can't even luck your way into the postseason. Think about this for a second. I'm going to see where they're at in the standings because it might have changed recently and it's not going to make my point as strong. But if they are in the standings where I think they are, boy, is it going to hurt a little bit. They're not. They're just on the outside looking in, but I'll make the point anyway. The Brooklyn Nets are supposed to be a mess. They're 13 and 23. They're 10 games below 500, so they're not playing great. And in the wide open Eastern Conference, they're only 4 games back of a playoff spot. The 76ers, a team that the Suns just beat, 6 games below 500, are 2 games out of a playoff spot. You've got a team 2 games below 500 in the Chicago Bulls that are in a playoff spot. Again, it takes effort to not be in a playoff spot. The Los Angeles Lakers are not supposed to be a good basketball team this season. They've got an aging LeBron. They're the 6th seed right now. The Suns aren't even a 500 basketball team. The Phoenix Suns, with their .457 winning percentage, wouldn't make the playoffs in the Eastern Conference. The Eastern Conference that has a team below 500 in a spot. The Phoenix Suns wouldn't be a playoff team in the Eastern Conference, and yet you want to convince me that trading the 2031 unprotected first-round pick is the direction that this team needs to go. No, thank you. I will not sign on board for that process. I am getting off the ride. I've been off the ride. We made a declaration right before the holidays. We said this team, first round exit. We've amended it a little bit over time. We are adding another declaration to this. January 8th, 2025. It is time to trade Kevin Durant. It is time to trade Bradley Beal. It is time to consider trading Devin Booker. It is time to end this experiment. It's over. I'm not trading future unprotected assets. I'm in the business now of getting my assets back. I think I've got a pretty decent coach. I know we probably didn't sign up for a rebuild or a retool, but that's where we're at. Because I'm not trading the 2031 unprotected first to move Bradley Beal. Because that's what you would do. You pair it up with that contract to try to send it out so that you can trade for Jimmy Butler. No, 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 no. Not happening. Wouldn't be me if I was in charge. I would much rather take my lumps, admit my faults, and hit the reset button. Because the damage you do with the risk that you run of trying to triple down and it not paying off does even more damage than you've already done. This already is going to be a 3 or 5 year process to get out of. By tripling down or quadrupling down, you almost double the length of time this could take if it doesn't work out. If you win a championship, everybody will deal with the pain. But ask yourself this. Are the Suns closer to being a championship contender and winning a championship, or are they closer to ending this whole thing? Ask yourself that question. Ask yourself that. On the other side, it looks as though one of the defensive leaders for the Cardinals might be moving on. How big of a loss? Should they bring him back? And where should they go in free agency if he doesn't return? That's next in the lunch break. KDUS AM 1060. Welcome back to the lunch break. KDUS AM 1060. We got you till the top of the hour. Jim Rome. Also, make sure you use this time to download the KDUS AM 1060 app so you can take the show, take the station with you on the go. Maybe you're not in your car. Maybe you're not listening to us always on the AM or the HD2. You can now take the station with you on the go. So make sure you download the KDUS AM 1060 app today. Not only can you listen live to all of your favorite programming here on the station, but also one of the cool things that we've got, if you scroll down to the bottom, the video component of this show is also there. So if you want to catch up on the entire show or you want to catch up on a specific segment that we did that we deemed worthy to chop up and cut up and put up on the YouTube page, then you can go over to the KDUS AM 1060 app and you will see it there. So again, highly recommend downloading the KDUS 1060 app here today. Back into the Cardinals for just a second. I told you it was going to be a Suns heavy show. It is a Suns heavy show here today. We'll get back into it probably to close out the last two segments of this hour. But I want to dive into the Cardinals because yesterday, and producer Dylan's back, by the way. Let's a round of applause. Producer Dylan is back. He was away for a little bit on vacation. He's back. Producer Dylan, this is very much up your generation's alley, okay? So I don't mean to attack your generation in particular, but you're going to know what I'm talking about as I go down this road. And you can nod, you can hop in, and whatever you want to do. But we are now in an era where if you follow somebody or you unfollow somebody or you like a picture or you don't like a picture or you whatever, reactions on social media are now just a be-all, end-all. And we in the sports media, I don't think have caught up to this because the moment somebody follows a team or unfollows a team or removes something from their bio or puts something into their bio, we just lose our marbles. We just don't know how to contain ourselves. We try to dissect comments that are left. It's just all over the place. Well, Kaiser White, linebacker for the Cardinals, certainly hinted at on social media that his time with the Arizona Cardinals is coming to an end. I will read the headline from the Sports Illustrated site that covers the Arizona Cardinals. He hints at goodbye. He hinted at it. He put a post up on Instagram and said, "Thank you, AZ." And then Mac Wilson, one of his teammates, responded, quote, "Don't do this to me. Appreciate you for everything, Seven. For real, bro. The true epitome of a leader. Go get yours," end quote. And so that has kicked up a dust storm. That has kicked up a hornet's nest of, is Kaiser White saying goodbye? Now, he's a free agent at the end of the year. He's not technically a free agent yet, but he's set to become a free agent once the new league year kicks in. And so there is obviously a decent chance that he is going to be gone from this team. A super impactful player, a leader for that group. I mean, you want to talk about a group that was dealing with injuries all across the board, and he was a true pro leader, huge player for them. I think the Cardinals should be super interested in bringing him back. One of the players that they brought in to instill this culture. Culture's been a big theme here today on the show. Kaiser White was brought in here to be a very helpful piece to the culture that Jonathan Gannon was trying to build. I would say passed with flying colors, A+. Mac Wilson saying, "Go get yours," meaning go get the bag, go secure the biggest contract that you can get. And so we are left to try to decode this. Was this Kaiser White saying goodbye? Does this mean there is no chance that he is coming back? That by saying thank you, by saying goodbye, that's it, it's done, he's moving on to the next chapter of his career? Well, no. Here's what's going on here. This is a player who's hitting free agency. He may want to apply pressure to the team to try to bring him back. You may do something like this to get the fan base all riled up. You may try to poke the bear a little bit. But you also might just be saying thank you because you're set to hit free agency and you don't know what this is going to look like. Another team might offer him more money than the Arizona Cardinals are willing to offer him, and he might go, and he might just be truly saying thank you. It does not mean that he's gone. It doesn't mean that he's and going to try to come back. This could just be a very heartfelt message to a fan base. It doesn't have to be anything more than that. We don't have to read into this one way or another. If the Arizona Cardinals want to bring Kaiser White back, then they can make him a competitive offer, and it appears as though he enjoyed his time here. He could very easily come back. He's well-liked. He's got teammates who respect him. He would be a welcomed return to this team for next season. I'd like to see him back on this team next season, but I don't think there's an ulterior motive here. I don't think there's something for us to try to decipher. I don't think there's something for us to try and decode. Oh, did he mean this or did he mean that? It's just somebody saying goodbye because he's set to hit free agency. Now, this position group in general, and this is kind of where I want to take this, this position group in general, Kaiser White or no Kaiser White, I think needs a makeover. It needs an overhaul this upcoming offseason. They need more players, more depth at that position. You win football games with your front seven being able to stuff the run and get after the quarterback. That's where you win football games. You got quarterbacks who are super athletic. They can extend plays. They can get out of the pocket. It's tough for defenses, secondaries in particular, to keep good coverage up long enough. So what you need to do is have linebackers who can tackle out in space, and you need defensive line, defensive interior players that can get after the quarterback and disrupt the pass. That's what you need. The front seven is so, so important. We've mentioned the 5 pillars. We mentioned edge being something that is going to be a major priority for this team this offseason. Put linebacker on that list as well. Kaiser White or no Kaiser White. Bringing him back or not bringing him back. Him wanting to be back or him saying goodbye, see you later. This team needs an overhaul at that position. You got to be able to stop the run. You got to be able to tackle quarterbacks out in space. And most of the time, it's defensive ends that get out there, but sometimes it's linebackers who are put out there in space to tackle those quarterbacks. You need players that can tackle. You need players that can get after the quarterback, can stuff the run, can defend against tight ends and running backs catching the ball out of the backfield. That's where the NFL game is right now. You don't think it's difficult for opposing linebackers to cover Trey McBride? Yeah, it's pretty difficult. So the Cardinals need to make that a strength of their team. I mean, in 28 games, Kaiser White had 227 tackles. Statistically, one of the best players you're going to see on this defense, but was brought here to instill the culture. And we have seen Monty Ossenfort put somewhat of a priority, I don't want to call it a premium because he didn't overpay for any of these guys, but put a priority on guys who are important for the culture. James Conner extension, Budda Baker extension. Those extensions were not just talent-based. They're culture-based. We've mentioned how much on this show the entire identity and mantra of the Cardinals offense is James Conner and who he is and how he conducts himself, how he brings himself to practice, to the game, how he works during the game, everything. The same applies for Budda Baker. So Monty Ossenfort has shown to put a priority on this stuff, to put a emphasis on this stuff. And so I would not be surprised to see Kaiser White be a priority for this team, just like James Conner was, just like Budda Baker was. $73.4 million in projected cap space. They have all the flexibility in the world to bring back Kaiser White and his 227 combined tackles that we have seen over the last 2 seasons, 28 games. Culture matters. It's been our theme with the Suns all day today. Kaiser White was part of building a culture. He was one of the major signings that this team brought in when Jonathan Gannon and Monty Ossenfort took over. Because he was the best player at the position? Not necessarily. But because Jonathan Gannon knew, Jonathan Gannon had the trust that Kaiser White would practice the right way, would play the right way, would do everything the right way that this team needed so that Jonathan Gannon's message to his defense and to his team would be heard. And he needed players to be able to do that. Kaiser White was that player. So if this is the end, if he does leave in free agency, going to be a big loss for this team. But I don't read from an Instagram post or comments that he's gone or that this is the end. If the Cardinals make a competitive offer, I think there's a pretty good chance that he's going to be back. And I kind of expect them to make a competitive offer. What do you say? We take one more trip around the sun, and I mean that pun very, very literally. Why don't we talk about the Suns one more time here on today's lunch break? We'll do it next. KDUS AM 1060. All right. Let's try to do this with some semblance of order. There is a lot of chaos going on right now surrounding the Phoenix Suns. I'm going to attempt to put it all in a chronological order for you, and we can react to it all as it happens. Sunday, we hear, and we're going to play some audio so that we can really nail down this timeline. Sunday night, we hear this.
Hey everybody, this is Chris Haynes, and this is your Haynes Brief for today. I received pretty significant news out of Phoenix. Sources relayed to me that Bradley Beal and Yusuf Nurkic will be removed from the start lineup starting Monday at Philadelphia, and in their place will be starting rookie Ryan Dunn and Mason Plumlee. Now, there's also tension in that locker room. I'm told certain players are unsure of their roles and frustrated with how they're being used, and the coaching staff, they're still trying to figure things out. So this situation, it will be something to monitor moving forward. But as of right now, Bradley Beal, Yusuf Nurkic moved to the bench. Mason Plumlee and Ryan Dunn starters.
That's how we went to bed Sunday night. Bradley Beal, Yusuf Nurkic out of the starting lineup. It missed a 4-game losing streak that saw them lose to Indiana, that saw them lose to a shorthanded Grizzlies team at home, saw them lose to a Luka-less Dallas team at home, lost to Golden State in a very winnable game in Golden State. That's what they were in the middle of. We're making this change. January, a very important month. We have to have it here. We have to make up ground. We no longer have any wiggle room. It is a desperate time, and so it calls for desperate measures. That's Sunday. Monday, how does it go? Well, it works. Bradley Beal's your leading scorer off the bench. He leads the way with 25, and they beat a 76ers team on the road that did not have Joel Embiid. But that was not the storyline that came away from that game. What was the storyline that came away from that game?
I was going to say, I'm sure you've been aware of kind of like all the other stuff, moving parts around the league, Jimmy and all that.
Yeah.
There's some speculation around the league that this is related to that. Have you thought about kind of like moving on, sort of like related to the bigger picture?
So I need to be addressed because I hold the cards. So until I'm addressed and somebody says something differently, then I'm going to be a son.
I hold all the cards. Asked if the benching he thought had anything to do with the Jimmy Butler rumors that have been floating around. That answer, I hold all the cards. Until I am addressed, I am a Phoenix Sun. That's where we were going into yesterday's show. And on yesterday's show, we talked to you about how sustainable this was. Were they maybe doing this on purpose? Well, we kind of got an answer to that because yesterday, on First Take, here's what Brian Windhorst had to say.
Well, Melly, let me put those rumors about Beal to rest. They absolutely are trying to trade Bradley Beal. And one of the cardinal rules of sports, certainly in basketball, but across the board, is you never devalue your players, your assets. You never do anything bad to make them seem valuable, especially when you are about to trade them. So they put him on the bench. Now, you may say, why would you do that? If you're trying to trade a player, why would you put him on the bench? And that's because, guys, this situation is bleeped. And the reason it's bleeped is because the way they trade Bradley Beal is because he's got one of 2 no-trade clauses in the NBA. One is LeBron James, one is Bradley Beal. The only way they can trade him is if he says, I'm okay to be traded. So instead of trying to build him up, they have to violate the cardinal rule and put him on the bench. Now, I know that there was schematic reasons why they did it, and Mike Budenholzer tried to explain, but they're basically trying to make him feel unwelcome in Phoenix so that he will waive that no-trade clause. The player they want to trade him for is Jimmy Butler, but the Heat don't want Bradley Beal. So the only way for the Suns to get Jimmy Butler is to find a third team that not only would take Bradley Beal, because he's got 2 years and $100 million and is playing so poorly that they've got him coming off the bench, and then that team that would maybe take him has to take him where Beal would waive the no-trade clause. And all of this doesn't even take into account that Kevin Durant has 1 year left on his contract. And if they can't thread that needle, then you have to start worrying about that on the horizon.
So they're doing this to make him feel unwelcomed. Moving him to the bench, he plays well, leading scorer, leads the way as they beat the 76ers. They are clearly doing this on purpose, at least according to Brian Windhorst. It's not so much about the poor play. It's about trying to force him out. Okay, what's the response? Last night, 115-104 loss to the Charlotte Hornets that saw Bradley Beal play 31 minutes and be a minus 21 and score 10 points. Yusuf Nurkic, the other guy that got put to the bench, 19 minutes, 8 points, a minus 22. But Devin Booker scored 39 last night, so you got that. That is where we stand today. We sit here today with a 16-19 basketball team that just lost to one of the worst teams in the NBA. They've had 3 really bad losses in like 2 weeks. The loss last night to Charlotte, the Memphis loss, which I think is just it's just inexcusable. At home, healthy, big 3, Memphis missing basically everybody, and you lose. And then the Dallas loss when they didn't have Luka. They've had 3 just inexcusable losses in the last 2 weeks. So that's where we stand. A team that is outside of the entire Western Conference playoff picture, that is reportedly, allegedly, benching one of their big three in order to make him feel unwelcomed, to want a trade out. They are trying to trade for Jimmy Butler. And they are, oh, by the way, trying to save this season with not a lot of time left to save this season. That is where we stand here today. It's a day off today. It's a game against Atlanta tomorrow. I'm not going into a single Suns game right now expecting them to win. I don't care who they play. You just lost to Charlotte last night. You expect me to think that you can take on the Hawks? You expect me to think that even though you're coming back home, I just watched you be at home lose to Memphis. I watched you lose to Dallas at home without Luka. You expect me to think that Trae Young's not just going to walk into Footprint Center and drop 45 on you? I've watched this team play defense. They're lost. They're not a team. That's the takeaway that I have from all of this. This team is not a team. They are a bunch of individuals playing basketball. Now, you can say that's because of the egos involved. You can say that's because there's a new coach trying to get up to speed. You can say it's because they're poorly constructed. Whatever reason you want to throw out there, this team is not playing like a team. They're playing like a bunch of individuals. That's what they're playing like. They don't have any culture. Who's the guy that's going to step up and galvanize the room? Is it going to be Kevin Durant? Is it going to be the guy that forced his way out of Brooklyn, who left Oklahoma City when it got tough and went to Golden State and was not the leader there of that team, joined Steph and Draymond to win a title in Golden State? Is that the leader that's going to step up? Is it Devin Booker, who has all of the warts of the good, the bad, the ugly that has preceded him in his tenure here in Phoenix? The bad, getting to an NBA Finals, losing in that NBA Finals. Is that the guy that's going to step up and be a leader? Is the leader going to be the guy that just got moved to the bench? Is that who it's going to be? Is it going to be the coach who's been coaching for 35 games? Is it going to be the owner who's in, his third season? Is it James Jones, a front office executive who I wonder truly how much power, how much say he actually has? Where is the leadership coming from? Who is going to be that guy? Because that's what this team needs right now. If this is going to be saved, it's not going to be saved by trading for Jimmy Butler. It's not going to be saved by ridding yourself of Bradley Beal. It is going to be saved by somebody stepping up and being the leader. Somebody stepping up and being that voice. And I know Kevin Durant is a leader in certain ways. He's not the vocal type. But you know what? I'm sorry. That might not be what you do, but that's what this team needs right now. And so what's more important? Is winning a championship more important or being more comfortable more important? Which is more important for the Phoenix Suns? I would think, since they're not taking phone calls on Kevin Durant just yet, that they are still looking at this as full steam ahead. I would be turning the boat around. The storm clouds are out there. The waves are bumpy. This is not the day to take the boat out for a spin. This is the day to turn the boat around, drive back in, dock, clean the boat, shine the boat up, maybe get under the hood, change out some of the parts that you've been thinking about changing out. Maybe in a couple days, maybe in a week, when the weather's nicer, next weekend when you've got some time, that's when you take the boat out. This boat is not full steam ahead right now. This boat is, we got to turn things around, not the day to be taking the boat out for a spin. This boat has no captain. Who's going to be the captain? And I'm not talking about somebody who wears a C on their jersey. I'm talking about the person that when the storm comes, or when the waves are a little rocky, or when maybe you lose direction, is the person that can hold the wheel and everybody around trusts that that person is the person that we need to follow. Because it just feels like everybody's looking at each other and everybody's wondering who's doing what. And the longer this goes, the more you're going to get to a place of everybody's going to be out for themselves. And when that happens, this gets even uglier than it already looks. Luckily, We don't have a basketball game to talk about tomorrow. We'll preview a basketball game tomorrow when they take on the Atlanta Hawks. They return home to take on Atlanta. We'll try to get you ready in the best way we can for that game tomorrow. But this team right now, not a single game you're going to expect them to win until they show it. Turn the boat around. Bring the boat back to the dock. Coming up on the other side, we will do the leftovers. How about a new golf league? How about the Cowboys finally speaking? How about, oh yeah, that's right, there's some college football playoff games around the corner. We'll get to all of it. The lunch break, KDUS AM 1060. We are back to wrap up this edition of the Lunch Break. Appreciate you joining us here. KDUS AM 1060. Jim Rome coming up at the top of the hour. That's right, Jim Rome. 3 hours, 1 to 4 every single day on your drive home. So looking forward to that at the top of the hour. It is the leftovers. We get to all the stories that we didn't get to throughout the day. And a story that I've been wanting to touch on since the start of the show. Not because it was super noteworthy, but because I just wanted some positivity. I just wanted a good story to throw out there. And last night was the debut of the TGL. Anybody know what the TGL is? No? Producer Dylan's looking at me like I have no idea what you're talking about. You don't know what the TGL is. Not sure. You're not sure about it making its debut last night. Well, how about the new golf league that Tiger Woods, Rory McIlroy have put together? It's a 3-on-3 golf league. It took place last night inside the SoFi Center, a custom-built venue in Palm Beach Gardens, Florida. Now, the TGL stands for Tomorrow's Golf League, and last night had its debut. It was on ESPN. I did not watch it live. I watched a bunch of the highlights this morning, and I'll tell you, I'm intrigued. I love golf, huge golf fan. We've got golf shows here on the station that do a great job covering golf. And I love it. I play it. I'm terrible at it, but I love getting together with friends and working at it. It's just one of those games that you just love to be out there and play and work on, even though it's frustrating. It's just, I enjoy it very much. I love it. But I love being out there. I love playing. I love driving the golf cart around. I love trying to see, okay, what kind of shot can I hit from here? What am I trying to negotiate? I've got this tree because I don't hit the ball into the fairway, so I've got to negotiate a bunch of different stuff. I like feeling, reading the greens, putting the ball. I like all that stuff, right? I also love Topgolf. It's a great night out with friends. It's more kind of a simulated type golf. Okay. This kind of blends those two things together. Simulator, not being on the course, but still swinging, all that kind of stuff. So I was intrigued. I wasn't sure if I was going to like it. I wasn't sure if it was going to necessarily kind of feel like I was watching a sport or if it just would feel like I'm watching guys just hit in a simulator. And I will tell you, the TGL, and if you haven't seen this, they hit shots into a simulator on the hole. But then when they get up to the green, their approach shots, if they're around the green or in the bunker, they have an actual hole where the putts are done live. They hit out of a bunker with sand. It's real grass. The thing moves and pivots and rotates and changes and all sort. That part of it's really cool. The technology behind it is really cool. I saw the highlights. I was like, okay, I'm intrigued. So the next time this is on, I will probably sit down and try to catch a little bit of it. Because I'm intrigued by, just like I'm intrigued with the XFL and when they had the Alliance football leagues, those spring leagues, not necessarily for the quality of the sport, not necessarily for the competition that we're going to see, but more for what technology are we seeing here that sports are going to steal? What technology are we going to see that golf is then going to implement when they are at the Masters, or they're at the U.S. Open, or they're at the Open Championship, or the PGA Championship, or in the FedEx Cup playoffs, right? What are they going to take from this and try to adopt into their game, in their presentation, to help bring more people in? That's why I'm intrigued by it. Now, Tiger Woods is behind it. He was on the broadcast last night. McIlroy, it was on it. And I thought it was cool. I thought it was interesting. I thought it was unique. It's not for everybody. Let me make it very clear. You might be the diehard golf fan. You might not like this. I embrace kind of and look, there's a crowd. They're playing music. There's a DJ. There's all, like, it's not your traditional golf venue. It's indoors. It's very anti everything that you would expect to come with golf. And I like that. I think it's interesting. It's unique. It's different. It's never going to replace the PGA, but what I would love to see from it would be you have the PGA, your traditional golf, but then you can then have these TGL events that can be team-based. I think team golf, my favorite events of the year, or on a regular basis, I love the Ryder Cup. I love the President's Cup. I love all that stuff. Those team events where you're battling it out and you're making matchups, and I love that part of golf. I wish the PGA would lean more into the team golf aspect. It's why LIV started the way that they did with the team golf stuff. I think there is a pathway there. I don't think LIV necessarily tapped into it all that well. Maybe the TGL will be able to do so. So just wanted to quickly touch on that because I was kind of intrigued by it last night. Watched some of the highlights this morning. We talked yesterday about the Bears' request to interview technically still current Cowboys head coach Mike McCarthy. They have an exclusive negotiating window on his deal that comes up in the next couple of days. And the Bears made a request. The Cowboys didn't really respond. They finally did respond, and they denied that request. Now, they have the ability to do so because he is still under contract with the Dallas Cowboys. That negotiating window runs through January 14th. His contract expires today, but they have that window through January 14th to where they can still exclusively negotiate with him, and that's why they need permission to speak with him. I didn't necessarily understand why the Bears would be interested in talking to Mike McCarthy. They're interviewing Pete Carroll. It just doesn't feel like I get it. Cast a wide net. Talk to everybody. Even if you don't necessarily want to hire that person, maybe you can pick their brain. You can get an understanding of what they think is wrong with your team or what needs to be fixed about your team or what they would bring to your team, and that can help you kind of narrow down, identify who you want to have as your head coach. So I get it. You talk to everybody. But just Pete Carroll, Mike McCarthy, they don't feel like what the Bears need. The Bears need one guy. The Bears need Ben Johnson. The Bears need a super young, innovative offensive mind to pair with Caleb Williams. They need to finally do this right. They need to finally pair their young quarterback. This would be quarterback 3 that they would have done this with and not do it correctly. You draft a quarterback, pair that quarterback with an offensive-minded head coach that can get the most out of him. They didn't do it with Mitchell Trubisky. They didn't do it with Justin Fields. They didn't do it here at the beginning with Caleb Williams. Here's their chance to rectify that situation. Here's their chance to fix that situation. So talking to Mike McCarthy, or at least trying to, talking to Pete Carroll, who they're going to interview tomorrow, I get it, but I would much rather you talk to Ben Johnson. I would much rather you talk to Bills offensive coordinator Joe Brady. Pick the brains of the offensive side of the ball. You did the defensive side of the ball. You had Matt Eberflus. It didn't work. It didn't work. Get an offensive mind in there. So, and from the Cowboys' perspective, if you're denying this request, that certainly leads me to believe that Mike McCarthy is going to return as a head coach, and you're going to give him a new contract. And I know some people in Cowboys land who cover the team on a regular basis, and I saw them bring up what's a really good point. If you bring him back, no matter how long the contract is going to be, he's going to immediately be on the hot seat because of the way this year ended. Now, not all entirely his fault. That got hurt, but he's going to be immediately on the hot seat. So how long of a contract are you going to give when there is a non-zero chance 1 year down the road you're going to just fire him and then have to pay out all that money? So it's a weird, delicate dance that Jerry Jones, the Cowboys, and Mike McCarthy are going to do. It's a very weird, delicate dance that they have to figure out here. I expect him, since they declined the request of the Bears to interview him, I expect him to be back, but it doesn't matter how long of a contract that they give him. It doesn't matter how many years, how much money. It really doesn't matter. He's immediately on the hot seat. He is immediately expected to turn things around. That's where they're at. We've got 2 college football games coming up, and I hope to maybe get more into this. Maybe in tomorrow's show. Maybe we'll get to it. We'll definitely get to it on Friday when we'll do a Football Friday for the playoffs. And at some point tomorrow, I do want to discuss which underdogs I like the most for the NFL slate this weekend, which underdogs are best suited to pull off the upset. We can evaluate all their candidacies to be upset teams. But we've got some college football playoff games coming up. We've got 2 semifinals. We've got a semifinal tomorrow, Penn State, Notre Dame. We'll dive into that tomorrow. And then you got Texas, Ohio State on Friday. We are getting closer and closer to the championship there. You have the 5, 6, 7, and 8 seeds all playing. You had all of the teams that got the bye lose. Oregon lost, Georgia lost, Boise State lost, ASU lost. All of the teams that got the bye and didn't have to play in the first round lost. Now, in the first round, you had all of the teams that were hosting the games won. Texas won, Ohio State won, Penn State won, Notre Dame won. So in the first round, all of the home teams won. In the second round, all of the teams that had the bye lost. What thing will emerge from these semifinal games? Overall, this has been a huge success. Anybody who's knocking, we don't have 12 deserving teams, this has been a huge success. It's been fun. It makes the college football season more exciting because you have teams that are in it longer, even if they suffer a bad loss early in the season, or maybe even 2 bad losses early in the season, and then you get the drama that we get now with these 2 games. I think they're both going to be exquisite. I think they're both going to be awesome. Texas, Ohio State is one that you dream of, and Penn State, Notre Dame. Penn State, can they continue? They beat SMU, they beat Boise State. Are we looking at another battle with Ohio State for them to finally overcome that hurdle of winning a big Big Ten game? We will see what all that looks like. So I want to get into that here as the week goes on. So we'll definitely prioritize Penn State, Notre Dame tomorrow, and we'll prioritize the NFL playoffs for this weekend, and we haven't discussed it at all. Thank you, Phoenix Suns. I will very much appreciate a quick timeout from them for tomorrow's show. But who knows? They're the gift that keeps on giving. You never know what might happen, but between now and the time we talk tomorrow. Jim Rome is next. Appreciate all of you for joining us. Producer Dylan, glad you're back. Appreciate you. Everybody, make it a great rest of your Wednesday. We'll talk to you tomorrow. See ya.